I've replaced all of the ribbon wires that were factory installed in this amp between the main board and the tube socket board here. So these were what was in there. They are a stranded wire inside. I thought they were solid, but I think they're stranded. Anyhow, I had suspected that was causing some of my noise on the preamp tube, the first position preamp tube. So I've replaced them all with stranded wire, number 22, just regular stranded wire. I use red for all the plate connections, so I know in the future which ones are plate connections, and black for everything else. So, seems to have helped, but there is still a little bit of noise in here. And I was using this wooden dowel to go through and tap the wires and see if it was still tap sensitive. And it was a little bit tap sensitive on this first tube. It's better than it had been, but it was a little tap sensitive. So then I started moving the wires around a little bit, and I figured out which one it is. It's grid number 1, so that's the very first stage into the preamp of these amplifiers. So there's a lot of gain in that stage, so it's just very sensitive. So I did isolate it from the others, and as I moved them around, it got some high frequency squealing on it. So I did what I've seen in old Fender amps and wrapped a wire around that wire and ran that wire down to this ground connection that was already here separately. Just one end of it, it's just a shield essentially, but you can see it's still a little tap sensitive. But the tube, way less tap sensitive, so it's made a big difference there. Made a big difference there. So anyways, I think this was worth it. Might be easier ways to do it. Maybe leave the ribbon wires in there, ribbon cables in there, and then just isolate this grid and shield it and use shielded wire or something like that. But anyhow, this is the fix. So now I'm gonna put some wire ties and stuff on to fix up the wiring a little bit and put all the screws back in it and put it back together and play on it, see how it sounds. Thanks for watching. So I've added to the grounding here, or the shielding I should say. You can see the wiring to the tube socket board has been updated to all individual stranded wire. Then I did something I've seen in Fender amps before. Just wrapped some stranded wire around the wiring to the tube socket board and brought it to a star point, and over here on that black wire to that grounding point. May have helped a little bit. The 60 cycle hum is still pretty strong. This could probably be fixed with better filter supply caps. That's these big gray ones right here. Better, bigger, more would probably help that quite a bit. But what this does seem to have helped is the sensitivity of the wires to the tube socket board. So of course this was the one I mentioned. It's fairly sensitive, but not as bad as it was. The tube tap sensitivity has gone down dramatically. None in these tubes, virtually none. And then the rest of the wiring, some sensitivity there. None there, none there, none there. So this is the wiring to the power tubes, this is the wiring to the phase inverter tube. This is the wiring to the second preamp tube. Only one stage, this being a 12AX7, having 2 triodes in that tube. Only one side of that tube's being used, only one triode. The other side, if you look at the board, the triode grid, or the plate grid and cathode are all shorted together. So there's actually a stage of the tube not even being used there. No sensitivity. Little sensitivity here. Both sides of that triode are being used. So for now, I think I'm going to go with this. I'll put some more zip ties on and clean up the wiring a little bit. Put the back cover back on, because of course the back cover also has shielding glued to it. It's a foil type shielding glued to the back of the cover. And this should help cut down on any further noise. All controls are at the 12 o'clock position right now, except for the all controls except for the reverb are at the 12 o'clock position. There's some zip ties holding everything together. Just don't want to leave any wires loose. That ground is a little loose coming across there that I added, zip tied to those small signal wires. Don't want to zip tie it to any of these AC primary wires or the transformer output lead or anything like that. There's the star point. It's got vinyl electrical tape plus heat shrink over the top of it, starring out to give these grounding spirals to all the tube lead conductors, and then of course that grid number 1 all by itself to its own ground right there. The noise isn't perfect, but it's better than it was, and better filter caps would probably make a pretty good difference. This is 60 cycle anyway. There's both master volume and regular volume wide open. We'll put the cover on, see if that gets better, and then maybe down the road put new filter caps in it. Okay, I had to do one more last thought on this amp. I put the rear cover back on with the foil shield on it and turned it back on, and this amp is significantly quieter than I can remember it being. It may have been very quiet when I originally got it, but I played on it for over 10 years, and over the years things just changed, and I guess you just don't really notice it until you compare it to something else and you go, wow, this thing's making a lot of noise. So now it's all put back together, it's on, it's very quiet compared to how it had been. So I'll show you right now, all of the controls are at 12 o'clock position. I'll turn up the master volume and the volume just to see. That's the master all the way up, and that's the regular volume all the way up. There is still plenty of noise there, but this is significantly quieter than it had been. So either way, I'm happy with that.